Mr. Eric Almighty and Phil the Filipino? Yeah, they've got you covered. And all you gotta do is wait for it. This is the Wait For It podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Wait For It podcast YouTube page. I'm your co-host, Phil Smith, a.k.a. Phil the Filipino. And, of course, joining me to my right, your left, I assume. Nope, actually, I think it's the same. It's probably on your right as well. Mr. Eric Almighty. Eric.
Complicated it.
Yeah, I really did. I overthought it, and I totally messed it up. Eric, it is good to be back here with you with another live stream. I'm glad we're getting into more of a routine with these as we kind of expand our live stream library. But excited to talk to you about this one, a very heavily anticipated film with a lot of really high expectations too. So it'll be a fun conversation that we're gonna have here.
I mean, the biggest movie of the year so far, right? I mean, Spider-Man: No Way Home kicked out the year of 2021 with a bang. And we're starting one with a bang as well. The Batman has been talked about a lot since it released. So if you are here with us, we're going to keep it spoiler free for you guys. We really want this to be something even after the live stream that people can watch. But if you're here, please ask us questions because this is all everyone's talking about. So obviously, we're excited to be able to do this finally. Now that you came back from LA, we both got to see it over the weekend. So yeah. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm back. I would like to say I'm refreshed, but I'm not. I'm absolutely exhausted. I need a vacation from my vacation, as people like to say. But nonetheless, we're going to bring you another great live stream here on the Wait For It podcast. For those of you that are brand new and you're stumbling upon our channel, again, typically we are a podcast that you can find on all of your favorite streaming websites. But we have been, slowly diving into more YouTube videos until I finally convinced Eric to go ahead and live stream Elden Ring, which I'm really working very hard on to get you guys that content because I think it'd be very entertaining. But until then, we will continue on this course because we are going to be doing yet another film review. So Eric, for anybody that is brand new, whether they haven't seen one of our live streams or heard one of our movie reviews, let them know how this is going to go, and then we'll just jump right into it.
Yeah, so we keep things pretty simple here at the Wait For It podcast. We're going to start off, especially spoiler-free, start off with likes. We want to start off on a positive note. There are a lot of positive things to talk about this film. Then we jump into dislikes, and a lot of times we'll have some differing opinions potentially, but we do go ahead and from there jump into maybe some Rotten Tomato scores, some data. Then we jump into our overall thoughts and final grades, because this wouldn't be a review unless we gave it a grade. So that is going to be our layout for the episode. And of course, we're looking forward to seeing if anybody's jumped on today. If you got any questions, we'll probably throw those throughout the episode, but may save them for the end. Just depends on your questions. So feel free to throw that in there. We'll be looking, I think now with StreamYard, we're pretty much streaming on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So again, we should be able to see it from any location.
Yeah, folks, so let's go ahead and get into a synopsis of the Batman. For those of you that do not know, Batman ventures into Gotham City's underworld when a sadistic killer leaves behind a trail of cryptic clues. As the evidence begins to lead closer to home and the scale of the perpetrator's plans becomes clear, he must forge new relationships, unmask the culprit, and bring justice to the abuse of power and corruption that has long plagued the metropolis. Of course, the Batman starring Robert Pattinson as Bruce Wayne / Batman, Zoe Kravitz as Selina Kyle, and then you also have Paul Dano as the Riddler, Colin Farrell as the Penguin, Jeffrey Wright as Lieutenant Gordon, John Turturro, just a who's who of cast. Andy Serkis, I definitely can't leave him out. He's obviously a legend in his own right as well. So yeah, Eric, let's go ahead and get into these likes here. And I feel like we have to start with the most obvious one. At least it's the most obvious one for me, and it's Paul Dano. And it is a character in the Riddler that we have gotten as far as the version we have is the Jim Carrey version, which is very different from the version that we get in this film. And I love it. It is a very haunting and chilling performance by Paul Dano. And I didn't really know too much about him going into this. I don't know about you, Eric, But I do remember the casting and it not really having an impact on me. I was like, okay, we'll just see how this film goes. I was already on board when they casted Robert Pattinson. I was one of those people that was very excited about that. So, to see what kind of take we are going to get on this iconic villain. I'm glad they're steering away from the Joker. I'm glad they're going into some of these other characters that are just as interesting, maybe not as interesting, but can also be just as sadistic and twisted and messed up as the Joker and some of the other characters. And I felt like, again, it was just the easiest way to kick this off, Eric, was to shout him out, because it was it's going to stick with me for a while.
Very telling you didn't start off with Robert Pattinson as Batman. So I'm very, very interested. This review has already kicked off to a very interesting place. Paul Dano, I love him so much. He's one of my favorite working actors now. I'm not going to pretend to have watched everything he's in, but everything I've watched him in recently has been really good. Phil, we are going to be doing an international feature on the podcast for the movie Okja, and he's fantastic in that. So I'm really excited to hear your thoughts about him in that one. In here, he's really great. I don't want to jump too far ahead into the dislikes portion, but an opportunity, I would have liked to see him more out of the mask a little bit, and we'll talk about that again on the other side of things. But overall, his performance was great, but he wasn't the only good performance. I mean, Phil, is there we'll talk about that on dislikes, but I don't know that there's a bad performance in this movie from top to bottom. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and shout out just a few that were standout for me in the way that Paul Dano was for you. I loved, absolutely, from the moment he came on screen, Colin Farrell as the Penguin. Just amazing. Fantastic job. So excited to see what more he has to offer for the role. And another person I wanted to mention that, again, not Batman, is Jeffrey Wright is really, really good as Jim Gordon. I loved the chemistry between him and Batman overall, and it was just a really, really good film. Our main character is great, I personally think. So maybe, Phil, is this a good segue for us to maybe bring the main character up of the movie? How did Batman fall for you, or are we going to have to wait until the other side of things to talk about him?
No, I don't think so. I was very on board with the casting to begin with. I think Robert Pattinson is a very good Batman. I think there's a little bit to be desired as far as his Bruce Wayne, and I think maybe that's where some people are falling. And again, I don't hate the Bruce Wayne that he portrays, but I think we're trying to find. I mean, we have so many iterations of this character now. It's like, God, which one is really the true, the one that everybody really, really defines. But no, I think he was. I think he's a great Batman, but I would like to see something maybe a little bit different, maybe a little less brooding, as far as his Bruce Wayne. But I still love it, and I'm very excited to see more of his portrayal.
Yeah, the bat suit was amazing. I really liked. The Batmobile was cool. Gotham is a character in this film. This is something you're going to hear in a lot of reviews, and it is true. The most Gotham that I felt from a movie was Batman Begins, which in itself is not a movie that I really enjoyed. I know people love that film. It's crazy to see that The Dark Knight happened after what was Batman Begins, in my eyes. But the closest thing we've gotten to Gotham in that, very just dark and sinister way is Batman Begins. And this is clearly the best Gotham that has been put onto screen. You could tell this is a love letter to Batman. I'm not going to be the comic guy. I'm not going to tell you I've read every comic and I know the best out of everybody, but I have read a little bit of it and I've seen a little bit of it, and I know what a lot of the resources or sources for this film was and some of the inspiration. They did a great job. A love letter. Matt Reeves did a awesome job. The cinematography is top notch in a lot of areas, not all the way through the runtime, which is a 3-hour runtime. But again, for the majority of that film to be beautifully shot and a great score behind it, I mean, man, I walked away from the theater very impressed with a lot of things.
Eric, am I out of line if I were to say I don't think it's the best Batman movie, but it's the most Batman movie? Does that make sense?
I mean, the amount of Batman that was in here was awesome. It was awesome.
Sign me up for a stripped down, the Batmobile isn't a tank. It's not this unstoppable force. It's just a really, really souped up awesome car, which that whole scene, that whole sequence, I think was my favorite. I saw this with our friend Kire while we were out in California, and she really loved, also highlighted the hallway scene, which is really, really cool as well. But I love that car sequence, man. I thought it was just, again, beautifully shot with the rain coming down and all that kind of stuff. And we had kind of seen some of that scene, of course, in the trailers, but like that scene, man, was so, so cool. I just really loved this version of the Batmobile. And again, the stripped down, not a lot of gadgets, just, I'm going to use my critical thinking skills and of course helping, getting Alfred to help out with all that kind of stuff. Dude, give me more of that. That's some of the best parts of the Arkham games. So, why is Arkham Knight like a lot of people's least favorite? Because of the Batmobile, and you just felt like unstoppable. But in the, the Arkham series, the other Arkham games, you're playing a detective, and give me more of that. I loved it.
The murder mystery vibe was definitely something different for a Batman movie, right? We're going to talk a little bit about this on the other side of things, but they did have like a very, again, murder mystery vibe where Batman is a detective, and that's obviously, he's the world's greatest detective, right? So we'll circle back on that. But when it comes to this movie, what I really liked was that it had that theme from start to finish. It was juggling a lot of different storylines, a lot of different things. John Turturro, I think we mentioned, again, he plays one of the mob bosses. He does a fantastic job. And it's just, again, well acted. And there's a really interesting story here. A lot of people have related this movie to like Seven is the one that comes up, I think, the most. And of course, Zodiac and things of that nature. I've never watched those movies, but I've known of them, and this movie makes me want to go see some of those. Like, it definitely felt different, like just genre-wise, from anything that's come before it, and for that reason, it's unique and original in that sense.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Zodiac, because that is something I mentioned in my final thoughts, and yeah, you definitely need to check out that film. Yeah, yes, it is. This is the Batman film I think a lot of us have wanted. Or even like so I think I never watched this. I never watched it, Eric, but like, wasn't the TV series Gotham more true crime centric, if I recall correctly? I didn't see it. I never watched it.
I mean, yeah, but listen, Gotham was its own thing. People that love it love it, and more power to you. More power to you. But yeah, honestly, Phil, anything else on the like side of things? Because I feel like the performances really drove this movie, and we could talk about how beautiful it was because, again, for the most part, the movie is very, very well shot. There are some jaw-dropping scenes of just cinematography in here. It's just, Matt Reeves is also a great director. I think of him from the Planet of the Apes series, and he does a great job in that too. That's one of my favorite series that have come out in the last decade.
It's awful.
They're my favorite. I love them. Especially because you don't, for fearful reasons. But
I don't know what you're talking about.
Anything else on the like side before we jump over to the other side? Because I know I have some things that I want to talk about there.
No, nothing else that I can think of. We do have a quick question from friend of the show, Landon, who we'll bring him in here. He has a very important question. How many bats are in this movie, Eric?
Surprisingly, none. No, there's a lot of bats.
There's a few bats.
There's one scene with just a lot of bats. So you can at least have that to look forward to. Maybe 100 total? But it's only like...
It feels like you're just pulling that number out of your ass.
I am, sure, but it's only like 15 seconds worth. Like, you're not going to get... This isn't an origin story, and that's something to definitely be said since it is a spoiler-free review. Why don't we say that out loud? It is very early Batman. So we're not getting the scene in the cave where he meets, he sees the bats for the first time. We do get to see bats in the Bat Cave, but yeah, I'll just say 100. Let's just keep it there, Phil, and move on.
Sure. So let's go ahead and get into the opportunities or dislikes portion of this film. Eric, do you want to go ahead and lead the way here? Because I definitely have some takeaways for sure.
Yeah. So listen, everybody that's saying this movie is perfect. Every frame magnificent. It's just not a perfect movie. And you're going to hear a lot of disappointment in my voice for a movie I think very highly of, but it's because I know I'm not one of those people that think this is better than The Dark Knight. It isn't. That's a question that everybody has to ask themselves after this movie. And if you think it is, that's your prerogative, not a problem. I can understand why. One thing that stops this movie from being great, and in my opinion, rewatchable, because I am considering this when thinking of watching it a second time, which I'm gonna do, it's the pacing. This movie I thought was over because I wasn't keeping track of time, and then there's almost a whole nother hour to it. So it just really, I don't know, there was just something about the pacing of this movie. It didn't need to be this long, and there was a lot of story beats that were having to be pulled left and right, and I felt like it did a disservice to a lot of the great performances and a lot of the great characters we got to see in this movie. Phil, this movie felt 3 hours long for me.
I'm glad you said that too, because I also was not keeping track of time, and I was like, okay, we're wrapping up here. And again, like you said, there was a whole another 30 to 45 minutes of the film. I don't know why this was 3 hours. And again, I think Batman diehards are going to, you know, be able to point out, well, you know, this is this story thread, and this is why we did this, and everything like that. But yeah, like you said, when you think about an excellent film and wanting to re-experience it, I don't know that I want to spend another 3 hours in theaters watching this again. Not because I disliked it, and my final grade will show that, but I'm just not going to. It's God, I hate doing this, but the only other 3 hour films that I've ever seen in theaters are Titanic, and I was a kid, so I wasn't really paying attention, and Endgame, and of course Endgame tonally and Titanic obviously tonally completely different things, but I can spend 3 hours in a movie theater with ease, but I don't know that I would do that here again, because like you said, Eric, there is, you know, there is a lot of jumping around. There's a lot of retreading as well. You know, like a lot of people complain about that in video games where like they're reusing areas, and you just retread and go back to the same place. They ended up in that club like 18 times, right? Like
They ended up on the club. They ended up on that balcony. Where the bat symbol is.
Yeah.
Several times. You know, even when we're at the manor, like it's just Gotham did feel very not vibrant. Vibrant's definitely not the word, but it definitely felt alive and full. But we did spend a lot of time in those same areas. It was just really odd to me. Phil, one thing I didn't mention on the like side, and I'm just going to mention it quickly because it's going to counterpoint what I'm going to complain about. I really liked the introduction of a new gadget that is used to see things. And I think that was really interesting, really cool. Yep. Really cool. Makes sense, right? Batman is the world's greatest detective. He was not in this movie. And there's a big issue that I have with it, because everybody's like, finally, we got the world's greatest detective. It's fine if Batman can't figure something out, but if we haven't had that detective movie yet, maybe a 3 hour introduction to that detective shouldn't be how it ended. Batman just doesn't really figure things out. He's just really good at riddles. And that's really kind of what this movie comes down to. He's not really a detective, and he fails more than he doesn't. So that was a huge letdown.
But we'll talk about it afterwards, but I definitely almost spoiled something.
Yeah, huge letdown for me personally. Everybody's been saying it out loud off the rooftops. The world's greatest detective's finally here. He's not.
Yeah, I am more impressed by Robert Downey Jr.'s Sherlock detective skills than Batman's, right? Like, yeah, you make a solid point here. I have something. And I want to know. I've been wanting to talk to you about this because it's been driving me crazy since Kira and I saw it the other day. And I went to go see this at a theater that I was not familiar with. I saw it in a theater in California that was very, very nice. But we also had to get seats like in the back corner, which we're not used to. We're usually like right in the middle. And I don't know about you, Eric. And again, maybe this is just me aging myself, but the film is almost too dark at some points. And I'm not saying like, oh man, that's a dark tone. Like, no, I can't see what's happening. And again, I don't know if that was a theater thing, and that's why I'm like, maybe I got to go see it again in my theater and sit in my seat. But Kira and I talked about it afterwards. We're like, it was really dark, right? And we were like, yeah, but like literally too dark, like really dark at some points. And maybe that was the theater. Maybe it was just me. I don't know. Did you have a similar experience?
I mean, a little bit, and then there was also the mixture of just like, again, you know, he's in the shadows and all that stuff. Like there was cool stuff like that. For everything that was cool, they would do something that wasn't as cool or you couldn't really see it. Like I could understand that.
Is he there?
I mean, your eyesight's also very poor at your age, but
really bad.
Yeah, it's really bad. No, I'm not. Don't say that. That is false, but I don't know. I could understand, especially if you're further back. We're not used to that either. We're used to being up close. I watched this in XD, which is the just highest end that you can watch at Cinemark, and it was fine. It was good for me where I was sitting, so I didn't really have that much of an issue with it. Thematically, like I didn't really have too many complaints. There is one where I just mentioned a gadget that I liked. I wasn't sure if they played it for laughs, but there is a scene where he's using, I guess, a gadget for the first time, and he like hurts himself, but then nothing comes from it. That was kind of silly. And Phil, if you don't recall what that is, again, he did. I was expecting him to use his cape for this, and he didn't. He had like a contraption where he had to get away very quickly.
Okay, I think I remember. Yeah.
It was weird. Like you saw his face as he's like in the air. So it was, and they made several cuts to that. So again, the cinematography pretty good, but there are moments, there are frames I would definitely take out of this movie.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, the runtime is going to be a thing that I know that may turn some people away. Hardcore comic book fans, it's not. You're going to go see it anyway. But if you're somebody that is kind of, on the fence, there are moments where there are clear-cut bathroom break moments, So, yeah, again, I think just with the, with the reviews that were coming out and the praise from all the people, because this is one of those films where I didn't get to see it right away. As soon as it came out, I had to wait a couple of days. I was really very, very excited about it. And it was not disappointing. It was just, I feel like you, Eric, it was like, this is the one, that everyone has been talking about. I don't know. I'm not trying to be pessimistic. I'm just like, this is it. There's nothing else. I don't know what to say. I don't know.
Yeah. And I didn't personally dislike Bruce Wayne in this movie. I just accepted it for what it is, knowing what's to come. We didn't talk about this on the like side thing too. And I feel like I'm overcompensating here because I have to come up with likes to fight all the nitpicks or dislikes that I have about this movie. But I really did like the story beat of I'm vengeance to one of hope, which is an interesting thing that Batman has to him. It's something I really, really like about that character, and especially early in his formative years. I mean, that's a big thing what they pull off here by the end. So it does work in many ways. But this movie, again, I hate continuing to bring up The Dark Knight, but people are just like really forgetting how rewatchable that movie is. And I understand. Do I think of Christian Bale's Batman first when I think of that movie? No, I think of Heath Ledger's Joker. But the Batman story is a good one. Like in The Dark Knight, you get a full-on story very similar to some of the beats of like hope and what Gotham really needs. You get those same story beats, and I just think that The Dark Knight does it in a shorter amount of time and with a better villain. I mean, honestly, because what this movie has a problem doing is juggling a lot of the characters it has in its 3-hour runtime and really where to direct its attention to. There's obviously another element with Penguin and Catwoman and the mob. The Riddler does take a back seat for like a solid 30 to 45 minutes, it felt like, Phil. And that's around the time where I realized this movie had pacing issues. That's around the time where, again, something happens and I think, okay, that was a weird way to end the movie. And then there's like another hour left.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. Let's go ahead and get into final scores here. I'll go over the Rotten Tomato scores. I do want to get into a question, and I just want to shout out Trey for coming in. And Trey is also a co-host of the Bat in the Hat podcast, which is another local Jacksonville podcast. Make sure you check that out. We're really hoping to link up and work with Trey here very soon with the podcast. But yeah, we won't get too much into this here, Trey. But I just wanted to thank you for joining the stream because it is a spoiler-free review. Do you think they're going to make the deceased mayor's son into Robin if they make another one? And yeah, I think they're definitely hinting at some sort of kinship there, some sort of mentorship role as far as that goes. But yeah, again, not going to say too much on that to keep it spoiler free. But yeah, I definitely think there's a lot planned for these, and I'm looking forward to it. I want to see more of this.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things I'm excited about is because they were kind of like hinting at it. Like, it was really interesting to kind of see Bruce's perspective, and this is why I didn't hate Robert Pattinson as Bruce Wayne, because I did like that element of seeing a kid go through what he goes through, again without getting too far into it. Not much of a spoiler there, because there's a lot of death in this movie. There's a lot of death, a lot of beat downs. So it's definitely going to come with the territory. One thing I'll mention, Phil, is they did tease a character at the end of this movie. And I'm not happy about it. I'm not excited. So I think that's something you and me will talk about because we haven't had a conversation spoiler-wise. And that's what makes these reviews so much fun, right? So with that being said, I think this is a good segue. Why don't we go ahead and kind of have a conversation about what everybody else is feeling, and why don't we get into our final thoughts and our grade?
Well, let's also tell people not to stay after the credits. That was one thing we will spoil. Yeah. Don't stay after the credits. Did you stay?
You can find the answer online to what it is.
Yeah.
It's
did
a real.
You stay?
No, I did not. I looked, and when I saw what it was, I was like, oh, I'll leave now.
Yeah, I just saw that there was something, and I didn't spoil it for myself. But yeah, we wish we had not stayed. But the Batman, as far as Rotten Tomatoes goes, and again, we always take Rotten Tomato scores with a grain of salt, whatever you guys think about them. 86% certified fresh as far as critics go, and then an 89% audience score. So it is very similar as far as how people are falling for the film. And with that being said, Eric, we will go ahead and get into our final scores. I do want to once again shout out our buddy here, and I will give this spoiler away. Unfortunately, the world is not ready for the evil that is Kite Man.
Kite Man, Calendar ready. Man. There's so many characters in the Rogue Gallery we probably won't see anytime.
I mean, I will say, spoiler alert, they did tease Kite Man in Peacemaker, and if he shows up in Peacemaker, I will lose my shit. But anyway, guys, Hell yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and get into our final grades. Eric, I will go first here on my end. Let me get that pulled up here. Thought I had it, and uh-oh. There it is. All right. So for me, The Batman is a good, not great movie. However, it may be the most Batman movie there has ever been, and it is an excellent true crime and mystery film. Pattinson is solid as Batman, but his Bruce Wayne, in my opinion, may need some work. And I absolutely want to see more of this version of Batman and whatever else they have planned. For me, again, the star of this outing is Paul Dano. I had not really been familiar with his work at all leading into this, but this rendition of the Riddler is just very, very chilling. I wish there was more of it in the film. And then, Eric, you made a very good point about seeing more of him outside of his mask. That would have been great as well. It's very Zodiac Killer meets Jigsaw. And I'm happy we got a gritty, dark version of the Riddler, with all due respect to Jim Carrey's version. The film has beautiful cinematography, even though at times I was struggling to make out what was happening. Again, as I mentioned, I don't know if it was the theater that I went to that I'd never been to before, and I don't know if it was a problem with whatever was going on there, but it was just a little too dark. And like literally dark, like not the tone, like actually I couldn't see. But, I think they could have tapped into something very, very special with a rated R rating. Eric, maybe we should have talked about that too. And maybe 20 to 30 less minutes as far as the runtime. But it's still another solid DC outing, and they seem to be getting their footing. So I'm very excited for the rest of the films this year. And I am going to give Batman a 8 out of 10.
Wow. Okay. So you went 8 out of 10. So that made me feel comfortable because I was conflicted on my score. I'll tell you why. The Batman, or Vengeance, as I'll remember it, was fantastic overall. there are so many things that were really, really great. They were amazing. They either paid homage to or it was directly pulled off the comic book pages and it was put on screen. Robert Pattinson, pulls off a vengeful Batman and an emo Bruce Wayne. He does a serviceable job. He does great, in fact. Zoe Kravitz, Paul Dano are really good as Catwoman and Riddler. Jeffrey Wright was standout. Andy Serkis, I wish he was in the movie more. Both of them are great additions to the DC universe. And Colin Farrell is a scene stealer as an unrecognizable Penguin. It's truly something special to watch, from all the great, all around great performances to the breathtaking cinematography and an overbearing score that never lets up. There's so many things to love about this movie, but I have to add a but. And it makes me hate myself to do so. But that but is the fact that this movie really could have trimmed itself down significantly, as the pacing does trip over itself during the 3-hour runtime, and some character beats do suffer for it. I honestly lost track of time, and when I thought the movie was almost over, there was almost a whole nother hour left. Everyone within earshot of me says something along the lines of, I wouldn't change a frame. Well, I would have changed several. And while I do like this Batman, saying this is finally us getting the world's greatest detective is a big stretch. I really can't give this movie less than an 8.5 out of 10. And that's really where my heart lies. I maybe will reconsider giving it a 9 upon second viewing. And out of respect for everything this movie did well, I am going to give it a second watch. But I don't want to be any more disrespectful than I feel like I've already been, because a lot of people love this movie. I just didn't love it. I enjoyed it. It was great. Yeah. But it didn't hit that upper echelon that, and I'm not saying that word right, but it didn't hit that up. Yeah. That peak of like where some movies sit, like The Dark Knight for me, just didn't do it for me. But there is an argument to be made. This is the most Batman movie out there. And if you love it for that reason, you're not going to hear any bitching from me.
Yeah, I honestly, I thought you were going to go lower than me. So again, it's like, this was a tough one because we don't want to slander the film. It's a very, very good film. I just think it could have been great, and I expected it to be great because of everything that was coming out here, as far as, all the reviews and everything like that. And we do want to also, one more time, let's shout out Trey here, who's giving us a little context. If you need reference for the two storylines the movie goes off of, it's Batman Year 2 and The Long Halloween, which are super long reads, but are top tier storylines for Batman's detective work and Bruce's slow grind into accepting the Wayne legacy. So that's just a little bit of a taste of what Trey and I'm sure his co-host as well are going to bring whenever we are finally able to collab with them, which is going to be very, very exciting. But again, Trey, Landon, everybody else who came in and stopped by, even if it was for just a moment, we really, really appreciate you. But yeah, Eric, is there anything else you wanted to mention before we get out of here? Otherwise, we'll of course let everybody know where they can find the show, and we'll wrap it up for tonight.
Yeah, I mean, really what it comes down to is we are maybe hours away, so if you're not watching this live, but just in case, we do have our giveaway for Collective Con tickets that you can go ahead and do. And if you are somewhere near the Kingsland, Georgia area, it's about 30 minutes away from the airport, there is another giveaway we're doing for another con that we may be a part of. So more information on our social media, make sure to take a look for it. A lot of great things that we're doing, a lot of exciting things. Bang, bang. We got the logo. We got the logo up here on StreamYard. We got some merch. We got all the stuff going on. 2022 is going to be really exciting. And for film, honestly, this was a good start to 2022. Honestly, Phil, this was really exciting. A lot of good stuff we have looking forward to in March. I mean, end of March is going to be like Halo, Moon Knight. We're looking forward to Atlanta. So much more to come on the Wait For It podcast.
The farther we can get away from Uncharted, the better. Just the terrible, terrible month that was February.
Wow. Okay. Well, you don't have to do that. This is going to be a Mark Wahlberg dedicated podcast just for Philip.
Well, that's true because he's going to be in BioShock. But if you guys want to keep up with if you want to keep up for all the casting news for BioShock, which of course is going to include Mark Wahlberg, make sure you find us anywhere you listen to your podcast, which of course includes Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, literally anywhere you find your shows. If you do find yourself listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave us a 5-star review. That is one of the best ways you can support the show. Again, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube page, depending on where you're listening or watching this episode. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram at Wait For It Podcast, and on Twitter at Wait For It Pod. If, as Eric mentioned, if you are by some chance, some semblance of fate, are listening to this episode or watching it on March 8th, it is the last of the dwindling hours for you to enter our Collective Con giveaway. So make sure to check that out over on the social media pages. But yeah, Eric, that's pretty much it for me. Trey says, I'll join for the Uncharted Love Fest. So never mind. Maybe we will not be collaborating with their podcast. So yeah, you know what? Never mind. Whatever, everything I just said, disregard that.
That's a damn shame. We were having a really good time at the JPU event, and we really bonded. So I'm really upset that we're going to have to sever ties. But listen, this has been a great episode. Honestly, probably one of my favorite live streams that we've done so far. So we got a lot of great stuff coming up this year. Make sure to stick with us. We appreciate the support. My name is Mr. Eric Almighty. That is my co-host, Phil the Filipino. And please don't forget, we release new episodes on our podcast every Monday and Wednesday with the occasional bonus content here on YouTube. And all you have to do is wait for it.
Mr. Eric Almighty and Phil the Filipino? Yeah, they've got you covered. And all you gotta do is wait for it. This is the Wait For It podcast.